The Young and the Restless spoilers shock. Nate had always trusted his instincts, and lately, those instincts had been screaming that something was terribly amiss. Ever since Aristotle, a mysterious and unsettling stranger, had arrived in Genoa, subtle changes had rippled through the fabric of everyday life. It wasn't long before Nate began noticing peculiar behaviors in those closest to him, Damian and Amy, figures he had long assumed were simply part of his trusted circle. Were now acting in ways that defied logic and normalcy. At first, it had been little things, furtive glances exchanged in dim corridors, hushed conversations that ended abruptly whenever Nate entered the room, and an unmistakable tension that seemed to settle over the trio whenever Aristotle was mentioned. Rumors had begun circulating among the locals, whispering that Damian might not be who he appeared to be. Some speculated that he was, in fact, an employee of Aristotle, a shadow operative waiting patiently for his enigmatic employer's command. This rumor, half-spoken behind closed doors, ignited Nate's curiosity. After all, why else would Damian be so devoted to a man who seemed to radiate danger and madness? Yet, it wasn't only Damian's actions that aroused suspicion. Amy, too, had begun to exhibit odd behaviors. Once a warm, approachable figure who had been a maternal beacon in their community, Amy now carried an air of secrecy. Could it be that she, too, was complicit in the web woven by Aristotle? Had she known about the mysterious man all along? The questions churned in Nate's mind, each one more unsettling than the last. Determined to uncover the truth, Nate began following the subtle clues left behind by his friends. He watched as Damian slipped away at odd hours, often under the guise of brief errands, and noticed Amy's furtive glances toward the horizon whenever she thought no one was watching. Driven by equal parts fear and determination, Nate embarked on a covert mission, tailing the trio and recording every movement and whispered conversation. One night, Nate's resolve brought him to a decrepit building on the outskirts of Genoa, a place that exuded foreboding and decay. Inside, dim light flickered over cold, peeling walls, and the oppressive atmosphere hinted at secrets long buried. It was there that Nate finally witnessed what he had long feared, a clandestine meeting between Aristotle, Damian, and Amy in a secluded, dark room. Hidden behind a half-open door, Nate crouched in silence, his heart pounding as he strained to hear every word exchanged. In the eerie quiet, the three figures assembled around a dusty table littered with papers, old photographs, and what appeared to be scientific instruments. Aristotle's eyes gleamed with a frenzied light as he spoke passionately about the secrets of DNA, a topic that, on the surface, should have been confined to academic discussion, but here took on a far more ominous tone. "Look at the strands, the very essence of life," Aristotle intoned, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "The power to alter, to redefine what it means to be human. This is not merely science, it is the key to evolution itself." His words tumbled out in a mad rush, a torrent of ideas that hinted at radical experiments and a disturbing ambition to reshape the fabric of existence. As Aristotle's monologue grew more unhinged, his companions listened intently, nodding in silent agreement. The conversation took a dramatic turn when it became apparent that the apparent familial bond between Amy and Damian was nothing more than a carefully constructed facade. Contrary to everything Nate had assumed, the two were not mother and child. Their closeness was an elaborate ruse, a desperate ploy to mislead him and anyone else who might pry too deeply. Amy, with her calm yet steely gaze, and Damian, with his measured yet submissive manner, had forged a deceptive alliance designed to hide their true roles in Aristotle's intricate plans. Nate's mind raced as he pieced together the fragments of the conversation. The very idea that these people, whom he had considered allies, were capable of such duplicity and cruelty was almost too much to bear. He realized that the meeting was not just a discussion about genetic codes or theoretical evolution, it was a plot that delved into the very essence of what it meant to be human. Aristotle, on the brink of insanity, spoke of a dark metamorphosis, He envisioned transforming himself into a monster of sorts, a creature that would transcend human limitations and dominate Genoa with an iron fist of genetic tyranny. The implications were staggering. Aristotle's madness was not a solitary journey into darkness but a contagious, insidious virus that had already infected those around him. Damian and Amy, it seemed, had become instruments in his twisted experiment, their actions serving to further the madman's vision. Their pretense of familial affection was a cruel trick, a mask to hide their complicity in a grander, more malevolent design. Nate felt a surge of betrayal so profound that it threatened to paralyze him with despair. In that cold, dimly lit room, as Nate listened to the diabolical plans being laid out, the enormity of the situation sank in. The DNA secrets discussed that night were far beyond simple genetic research. They were the blueprints for a new, horrific future. Aristotle's rhetoric painted a picture of a world where natural human evolution would be abandoned in favor of a manufactured, monstrous variant, a being that would hold all of Genoa in its thrall. Every detail, every whispered nuance in that conversation, confirmed what Nate had long suspected: he was witnessing the birth of a nightmare. As the meeting drew to a close, Aristotle's manic vision was clear. "We will reshape the world," he declared, his voice reverberating off the crumbling walls. "And in Genoa, we will create a force so powerful that humanity will be forced to bow before us." Damian and Amy exchanged glances, their eyes betraying a hint of regret, or was it resignation? But any semblance of moral conflict was quickly overshadowed by their unwavering loyalty to Aristotle's radical ideas. Nate slipped away before he could be discovered, his mind a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Anger, sorrow, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal churned within him. How could those he once trusted be capable of such ruthless deception? The realization that the facade of kinship between Amy and Damian was nothing more than a clever lie only deepened his despair. They had manipulated him with cold precision, playing on his emotions and trust to further a plan that was both horrifying and incomprehensible. In the days that followed, Nate found himself unable to shake the images and voices of that terrible night. The dark corridors of the abandoned building, the fervor in Aristotle's eyes, and the duplicitous smiles of Amy and Damian haunted him relentlessly. He began to compile every scrap of evidence he could gather, driven by the desperate need to expose the true nature of their sinister plot. Yet, even as he worked in the shadows, the looming presence of Aristotle's madness cast a long, oppressive shadow over Genoa. Nate's investigation soon revealed that Aristotle's ambitions went far beyond simple genetic manipulation. His obsession with becoming a monstrous figure was rooted in a desire to overthrow the natural order, to upend the balance between man and nature. Every whispered plan and every coded message hinted at a future where Genoa would be transformed into a dystopian realm, a breeding ground for a new, terrifying species that would be the antithesis of humanity as it was known. As the stakes grew higher, Nate realized that he was alone in his quest for truth. The conspiracies, the hidden alliances, and the dangerous ideologies at play were woven into the very fabric of the community. Each person he once considered an ally now seemed like a potential accomplice in Aristotle's grand design. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, Nate resolved that he could not stand idly by. The truth had to be revealed, no matter the cost. With every passing day, the tension in Genoa mounted. Whispers of rebellion and fear filled the streets as residents began to sense that something extraordinary and perilous was brewing beneath the surface. Nate's determination grew stronger with each secret he uncovered, his resolve hardened by the knowledge that he was fighting not just for his own sanity, but for the future of an entire community. In the quiet moments of dawn, as the first light of day crept over the horizon, Nate would often find himself staring into the distance, contemplating the monumental task ahead. How does one combat a force so insidious, so rooted in betrayal and madness? The journey would be long and fraught with danger, but he knew that the battle for truth was one worth fighting. He vowed that he would unmask Aristotle's true intentions, expose the treacherous alliances, and ultimately protect Genoa from descending into chaos. Thus, the stage was set for a confrontation that promised to shake the very foundations of the community. In the coming days, Nate would have to navigate a labyrinth of deceit, face enemies hidden behind familiar faces, and wrestle with the moral complexities of loyalty, trust, and the monstrous ambitions of a man gone mad. The secret of DNA, once a symbol of scientific progress and hope, had become the harbinger of a terrifying future, a future that Nate was determined to prevent, even if it meant putting everything on the line. As he took his first tentative steps into this dangerous new world, Nate understood that the fight was not merely against a madman or a single conspiracy, it was a battle for the soul of Genoa itself. And in that battle, every truth uncovered, every lie exposed, would be a step closer to reclaiming the humanity that Aristotle so desperately sought to destroy. After witnessing everything, Nate's world shattered into 1,000 irreparable fragments. He could no longer trust his own eyes, and the betrayal that cut so deeply left him trembling on the cold floor of that abandoned building. In the darkness, his anguished cries echoed against the peeling walls, a desperate lament for the family he had never had and the brother he had hoped to protect. The pain was not just of seeing his closest companions deceive him, but also of realizing that the people he believed in had sacrificed genuine familial love for a twisted ambition. The depth of betrayal. Nate's heart ached as memories of a more innocent time flooded back. He had always dreamed of having a complete family, a loving embrace, a sibling with whom he could share secrets and laughter, someone to stand by him through every storm. He had envisioned a future where he would guide and protect his younger brother, offering unwavering support in a world that often seemed cruel and unyielding. That ideal, however, lay in ruins now. The brother he longed for, the person who should have shared his joy and sorrow, had instead become complicit in a web of lies and deceit. The thought of being betrayed by someone so close, someone he considered as kin, was almost too much to bear. Every tear that streaked down his face bore the weight of lost trust and shattered dreams. Nate's mind raced with unanswered questions. How could they allow their loyalty to be swayed by the promise of power? What had driven them to forsake the bonds of family for the cold, calculating plans of Aristotle and his minions? In that moment, every cherished memory of love and brotherhood was tainted by the overwhelming sense of treachery. The revelation was as horrifying as it was personal, a stark reminder that those he trusted most could be the architects of his deepest despair. The sinister pursuit unnoticed. Unbeknownst to Nate. Far from the anguished solitude of his hidden vigil, Aristotle and his cohort remained blissfully unaware of their secret being observed. In a dimly lit room, Aristotle's fervor had not diminished. His eyes burned with an almost maniacal determination as he detailed the final phases of his plan, a plan so ruthless and calculated that it threatened not only the very fabric of Genoa's society but also the natural order of humanity itself. The conspirators, including Damian and Amy, continued their rehearsed roles with chilling precision. Their meeting, once thought to be a familial gathering, was in truth a meticulously orchestrated session to finalize the protocols for their genetic experiments. Aristotle's vision was grandiose and terrifying. He sought to transcend human limitations by exploiting the secrets of DNA, to evolve himself into something that defied nature, a monstrous figure who would stand as the supreme ruler of Genoa. His words, laced with the venom of ambition, echoed off the dilapidated walls, promising a future where the weak would be subjugated under the might of his own monstrous creation. Every detail of their discussion was steeped in a perverse irony. The facade of familial warmth and loyalty that Nate had clung to was nothing more than a ruse, an elaborate deception designed to lull him into a false sense of security. The very people he had hoped to call family had willingly chosen a path of treachery, driven by a hunger for power that overshadowed any semblance of human decency. Their plan was proceeding with an inexorable momentum, a dark tide gathering strength even as Nate's heart broke in despair. The inner turmoil and the quest for redemption. In the aftermath of the revelation, Nate found himself at a crossroads. His grief was raw and unyielding. Yet beneath that sorrow lay a spark of defiance. How could he allow this treachery to continue unchecked? The pain of betrayal became a catalyst, a burning desire to expose the sinister truth and prevent Aristotle from unleashing his horrifying vision upon an unsuspecting Genoa. Haunted by the sight of those he once loved and revered collaborating in such a monstrous scheme, Nate resolved that he would not let their darkness consume the world. His thoughts turned to the ideal of a true family, a union built on trust, love, and sacrifice, untainted by the lust for power. He imagined a world where bonds were cherished, where a brotherhood could stand as a bulwark against the corrupt ambitions of men like Aristotle. In his mind, this pure, unyielding family was a sanctuary that could heal the wounds inflicted by betrayal. With each passing day, Nate began his quiet, relentless pursuit of redemption. Stealthily, he gathered every shred of evidence, every whispered secret that hinted at Aristotle's grand design. Every coded conversation, every covert meeting was meticulously recorded and documented. His determination was fueled by the love he had once held for his would-be family, a love that now took on the form of a duty to protect the vulnerable and to reclaim the trust that had been so brutally shattered. The looming question, will they succeed? As Aristotle and his conspirators pressed forward with their cold, calculated plans. A lingering question hung in the air, a question that Nate could not shake from his mind. Will they succeed in their monstrous quest? The darkness of their ambition was as vast as it was terrifying. Aristotle's voice, filled with the madness of a man on the brink of transcending humanity, resonated with a chilling certainty. His plans were intricate, his resources vast, and his conviction unshakable. Every step they took, every secret experiment conducted in the dead of night, was a step toward a future where the natural order would be overturned, where the very essence of life would be rewritten according to his deranged vision. Yet, within this shadow of impending doom, Nate clung to a fragile hope. He believed that even in the face of overwhelming darkness, there existed the possibility of redemption, a chance to expose the truth and dismantle the sinister machinery that threatened to devour the soul of Genoa. His heart, though broken, still beat with the rhythm of defiance, echoing a vow to fight for a future where trust and love prevailed over treachery and ambition. In the midst of his inner torment, Nate found solace in the quiet resolve that came with understanding the full extent of the betrayal. His grief transformed into determination. A determination to honor the ideal of a true family, one that could stand united against the forces of corruption. He envisioned rallying those who still believed in genuine human connection, forging alliances with individuals who had not yet succumbed to the lure of Aristotle's promises. Together, they could become the guardians of the community, the steadfast protectors of a world that cherished life in its most unadulterated form. The road ahead. The path before Nate was perilous and fraught with uncertainty. Each day brought new challenges. As the network of deception grew more complex and the shadow of Aristotle's ambition loomed ever larger, the town of Genoa was on the brink of a transformation that could not be undone, a transformation driven by the twisted ideals of one man and executed by those who had forsaken the bonds of family for a cold pursuit of power. As Nate prepared to take his fight to the next level, the community itself seemed to hold its breath. Whispers of rebellion began to stir among the people, hints of a collective awakening to the treachery that lay hidden in plain sight. Even as Aristotle's influence spread like a dark contagion, the spirit of true kinship and loyalty, though battered, remained unextinguished. It was a light that Nate hoped would one day shine brightly enough to dispel the shadows of deceit and restore the trust that had been so callously broken. In the final analysis, the question of whether Aristotle and his allies would succeed was not merely a matter of scientific ambition or strategic prowess. It was a battle for the very essence of humanity, a struggle between the forces of cold, unfeeling ambition and the enduring power of love, loyalty, and genuine human connection. Nate's heart, scarred by betrayal but buoyed by hope, was poised to lead that fight. He knew that the road ahead would be long and filled with peril, But he also knew that the fight for redemption was one worth every sacrifice. And so, as the night deepened over Genoa and the conspirators continued their dark work, Nate stepped into the unknown. Armed with nothing but his determination, his aching sorrow, and an unyielding belief in the power of true family. Whether Aristotle's nightmarish vision would come to pass remained uncertain. But one truth was clear: as long as Nate's heart beat with the fire of loyalty and love, there would always be a chance to reclaim the light from the shadows.